My name is Jen Turchnow, and I am the CEO of Aringo MBA Admissions, and I am here today to tell you more about the Wharton MBA application and how to work on your essays. So as far as a little bit about me and Aringo is my name is Jen, and I've been with Aringo for the past almost 5 years, and we have actually been around for 20 years helping people complete their MBA applications, showing the best part of who they are and why they're a great match for these top MBA programs. Aringo was actually founded by an MBA alum of Wharton. And so you'll notice that when you work with Aringo, we use a team-based approach. So multiple consultants will review your entire application before you actually submit it. So here's a little bit about how Aringo can help you with selecting your schools, deciding on which essays and stories to share, and then as well as, answering some strategic questions like if you have a lower GPA, lower GMAT, or maybe a gap in your employment, we're definitely there to help you with solving some of those questions when it comes to writing your applications and showing those schools why you're their number one pick. So Aringo, again, we've helped about 4,000 people get into top MBA programs all around the globe. You can always check out our statistics on our website. So today we'll start off with talking about Wharton's essay requirements. Then we'll talk about the do's and don'ts. I'll go through a sample essay and then open it up for Q&A. And I'm going to try to stay on time today because right after this session, there's another deep dive into essays for Yale and then Haas. So we're back to back today. So make sure that I'm staying on task. So if you have questions and they don't get answered, you can always email me. I'm happy to answer. All right. So there are 2 essays that are required for the Wharton application. The first one's going to be oriented towards Wharton and your goals. The second one is going to be about how you plan to contribute to Wharton, not only just your cohort, but the community and the community at large. And it can also be, when you're an alumni. They also have one optional essay. And to submit these essays, you're going to be using a text box with a word count. So some schools will have you submit or attach a document, but Wharton's going to have you using word requirements, filling in that text box. So here's what the essays look like on the essay or on the portal. You do have to fill out some information to get to this point. The essays are also listed on their website if you're not ready to take this big dive into committing and starting the application, although I highly recommend that you start your application well before the deadline so that, one, you can get notified about anything exciting from the school, but then also you can start filling out the mundane, boring parts of the application and then be ready for these big chunks of filling out the essays, your resume, recommenders. All right, so let's dive in. Essay number 1, the prompt is, how do you plan to use the Wharton MBA program to help you achieve your future professional goals? You might consider your past experience, short and long-term goals, and resources available at Wharton. And you have 500 words. So from this essay, they're really wanting to hear about you and what you've accomplished. And in my terms, I call it a thread, right? Like they want to see how you're going to connect what you've done in the past with what you want to do in the future by inserting the Wharton MBA and the resource that they have available to you on campus. So this essay should take them on a little bit of a journey of who you are and what you've accomplished throughout that. So as far as do's for this essay, you want to make sure you have an interesting lead in, right? The admissions committees are going to be reading thousands of applications for Wharton for sure, not hundreds, but thousands. So you want to make it interesting. Start with an opening sentence that will definitely draw in the reader. As if you start off with, my long-term goal is, my short-term goal is, that's not really interesting. So, you really want to entice the reader to be like, oh my gosh, like this sounds really cool. What did this person do in Egypt? Or where were they when this happened? And you want to draw them in, right? You don't want to be gimmicky, but you do want to make sure that you draw them in. You also want to be specific in this essay. So they're asking you about what your goals are. So you want to be specific about what company, title, role you want to have. And it's okay if you're kind of like, I want to be in the general management of an FMCG company like Kraft Heinz, and work in the operations field XYZ. That's totally fine. Or you can even list a couple of different companies or roles that you would be interested in. It's also okay to talk about your past, about your backup plan as well. In this essay, you also want to talk about what you've learned and what you've accomplished. So you'll be able to kind of hit on those highlights and be able to, again, remind the committee why you're qualified and what you're going to contribute to the classroom conversations. And then you want to be specific about the Wharton advantages. What do you plan to get from them? Are you going to be working in their global center? Are you going to be working, with their entrepreneurship? Like, you want to name specific programs, clubs, activities. You want to be very specific so that you can definitely show the committee that you've done your research and you know that this is the right place for you. Things that you don't want to do. You don't want to repeat the question. Again, my short-term goal is to blah, blah, blah. You don't want to do any sort of repeating of that. I know a lot of people tend to start to show them how like different courses are going to be helpful. And so if you say like, I'm really interested in the economics of Europe and like this course title, and then because of its deep dive in X, Y, and Z, if you start to use the class description, that's not going to help the committee. The committee is going to say, we already know what those classes are about. Like, you don't need to regurgitate that to us. Tell us what you're wanting to learn in that class. Why is that class going to be pivotal in your learning and what you're going to do in the future? You also don't want to start to recite your resume, right? You want to give them a journey, but you don't want to say, I did this, and then I did this, and I did this, and this was the buildup to where I am now. You kind of want to be able to have it flow and go through your accomplishments, but you don't have to put everything that's on your resume in this essay. That they're going to read your resume. They're going to review it before they get to the essays. So, referencing it and showing that growth and talking about more than just your bullet points is what they're looking for. Beyond that, you also don't want to be vague. Like, I want to go into marketing, or I want to go into investment banking. Like, tell them more. Like, where are you wanting to work? What kind of fund are you wanting to work at? Or what kind of goals are motivating you? You don't want to be too vague so that the committee is like, but anybody can do that. And like, you're not really giving us anything more. If you say you want to go into consulting, what does that really mean? So that's essay number 1. Any questions before we move on? Ira, you have a question about, is it all right to mention names of some professors from Wharton you want to learn from if you've been following their work for a while? Yes, absolutely. If there's a specific professor, you kind of want to definitely say, like, I'm excited to learn from Professor X and learn about his experience in the consumer markets as it relates to the pivot during COVID or something like that, right? Like, whatever their specialty is, like, you want to put that in there as to why they are the right professor, not just that you Googled Wharton professors and you found his or her name. Any other questions before we move on to essay number 2? All right, here we go. Okay, so essay number 2 is going to be asking you about how you're going to contribute to the Wharton community. So, taking into consideration your background, personal, professional, and or academic, how do you plan to make specific, meaningful contributions to the Wharton community? And you have 400 words. So in this specific essay, they're allowing you to reference any part of your life that makes sense, that you have something special that you can share with the committee about who you are and how that can make a difference in the classroom. So a big part of any MBA program is the cohort that they bring together each year for each start. And so the committee prides itself on curating people from different backgrounds, different exposures, different walks of life, countries, any sort of diversity that you bring in. And that can be a very, very vague term, but anything that you do that's unique to you or a specific sector or a niche sector, those are, the experiences that when you sit down in a classroom, you can shed the light to people who are from, all over the different professions. You can share that light, whether that's like, the economics in the specific country, or, the experience of somebody who's been on the ground floor working their way up, or somebody who's worked in the CEO's office. You definitely have these different perspectives that you want to show. And so this essay allows you to highlight that uniqueness and how you're going to incorporate it and tie it into the Wharton experience. And so this is where you need to do your homework. Look at the curriculum, look at the different clubs and activities on campus. You want to do the research here so that you can find ways to marry what you have and what Wharton has and how you can combine them. And let's say that you don't find that, right? So if there's not a club for HR, what are you going to do? So you can create your own club, or there's not a special interest topic or conversation or conference. This is your opportunity to tie that into what you want to do and how you're going to make your mark on Wharton. So, you can be bold here. So again, you want to be specific. You want to share what you will do. And then you will also, again, highlight the research that you've done for the committee. You don't want to be vague, right? So I'm excited in joining the clubs and activities on campus. Or I'm excited to join the consulting club. Every single school is going to have a consulting club. And so that's an easy one. Maybe, if you really, really have a hard time and can't think of anything else to say when you're meeting somebody in person, or maybe even in your interview and you have to grasp at straws, doing something maybe a little bit more general is okay. But in your essay, you should be showing research. And so consulting club is not enough. Right? If you want to join the consulting club, talk about a specific event that they do or a specific case study that they've done, so that you can say I've done more research than just know the very surface level here. And you don't want to overthink it, right? So in a couple of different ways, you don't want to list out I want to be president of 1,000 different clubs, or that you have something so intricate of what you want to launch that you've gone into so much detail that now we're really zoomed into something, and we're not being able to really develop an actual essay. You're just really focused in on one thing, and it's a little bit hard for you to infuse more of what you've accomplished. Okay, some questions here. How much should I talk about the events, clubs, centers, and show my research? Less than 5 or more. Okay, so this is where it gets a little bit tricky. Maybe a little less. It depends on the flow of your essay and how much those tie together. So if you want to do one academic, one club, one center, that all kind of works out really well. I've done a good job of blending my research. But if you start getting into 5, if you can tie them together, I'm excited about the entrepreneurship and the social impact clubs, because this ties together my goal of X, Y, and Z. Then I think that it's okay to kind of start getting towards that 4, maybe 5, if you're doing 2 classes and how they tie together. How many contributions should you mention in the second essay? Good question. I would focus on maybe 2 to 3, right? You want to talk about something personal, maybe something academic, something that you can share about your field. But when you only have 400 words, so you don't want to get too in the weeds. But I think that you can absolutely get 2 to 3 in there and really have them make sense and be supported. Hi, Rafael from Sao Paulo. Nice to see you here. Okay, before we move on to the optional essay, any other questions about essay number 2? Okay, not seeing any, but we can always come back to it later on during the Q&A session. All right, so optional essay. As a general rule of thumb, we tend to like to use the optional essay to share something that maybe you weren't able to share in essay 1 or 2, and have that opportunity to show your commitment. This is also a great place where if you have, and they list this out too, unexplained gaps in your work experience, like maybe you were laid off or, COVID is, like we're at that time where people who went to college during COVID, maybe there's a gap in your employment because the job field was definitely slow and it was hard to get a job, or, maybe you were sick or fell ill, whatever that might be. You have this opportunity to use the optional essay. Another thing that they talk about is, sharing anything about who your recommenders are. So a couple of years ago, I had a client who asked for a current boss to give him a recommendation, and the recommender told the CEO, and the CEO fired him. So if you feel like asking for a recommendation could put your job in jeopardy, it is absolutely okay to use somebody else from a past company or a colleague, right? Like we can always talk about who you decide to choose, but it's okay. You should not be jeopardizing your job for the MBA application. So you can use this to be able to show that and say, due to the volatility of the tech space and jobs, I was unable to ask my current supervisor without feeling that I'm putting my job in jeopardy. So you'll see that I have 2 references from my past employer. One was my direct supervisor and the other was, X, Y, and Z, right? So you want to be able to kind of give that reasoning for them. The other thing is like, let's say that you're trying to speak to maybe a gap in or a little bit of a lower GPA or a semester where you didn't have good grades, something like that. They not only want to know about that moment, but they want to know how you've learned from it and how you've grown, right? Like that's the whole point of an MBA, is to be able to, face failure, learn from it, and move on. And if you're able to demonstrate that to the committee in the optional essay, it really helps them in their selection to say, he's done it before, he's been able to move on and move forward from this moment. And, that gives me the feeling that they're going to be successful in our class. So beyond that, you don't want to repeat anything that you've already mentioned in an essay. You don't want to, talk about things that are on your resume, or anything like that. So if you're going to add a new story or share something, they need to pass the so what test. What does this matter? So if you're sharing, again, an experience, you want to show, you'll notice that I have a gap in employment. I was fired after XYZ transpired. What I learned from this was, this is how I implemented change for the next time. MBA committees aren't afraid of failure. They love failure stories because they're so rare, because people always think everything has to be super positive. But there's definitely there's a lot that comes from a failure story. Okay, we've had a lot of questions, so let me scan through these really quickly. Sakar has asked if we can share some essays of selected candidates. Yes, that's kind of like my next thing, is I'm going to go through an essay that was shared from a GMAT club member. How does Wharton look like students interested in social impact in the consulting role? So Wharton absolutely is going to be interested in people that want to go into social impact. The biggest thing, again, is connecting the dots as to how the Wharton curriculum and different clubs and activities are going to connect you to that next step, because plenty of people have gone into social impact from Wharton. Just because Wharton's technically known, as a finance school, does not necessarily mean that you can't do social impact there. You absolutely can. Should we talk about a contribution we can make, one in a personal one and one a professional and academic? Yep, exactly. Ashita, if you have an example of how you can contribute to the Wharton community in each one of these sections and the word count fits, excellent. But if it starts to get too vague of like, I want to be president of this club, that's not enough. Like, or, I want to be a member, that's not enough either, right? So we need to, beef that up a little bit. So if you have the word count to be able to share one personal, one professional, and one academic, fantastic. If not, pick the strongest two. Hi, Jennifer. How does Wharton look at students interested in social impact? Okay, yeah. So we have this again. Social impact is a big story here. And there's definitely, I think the biggest thing is to consider what social impact means to you specifically. What kind of function or sector are you concentrating in? Because you can do that from a financial perspective. You can do that from a marketing perspective. You can do that from, supply chain. There's several different ways to make social impact or be part of the social impact community, or even how to create social impact in corporate or other worlds. It's more of, finding what your special talent is and how that can create the social impact in either a sector, a niche area, or function, right? Do you have any advice on how to proceed with goals essay for someone with this interest, right? So again, like, so I'm trying to think of like the best way to include social impact is, over the past 4 years, I've been working in corporate finance, and on the side, I've been working with the Boys and Girls Club, and I see a gap in how financial inclusion is, presented to different minorities across New York City. So my goal is to marry my financial expertise with financial inclusion and be able to work at a financial institution like JP Morgan or Chase. JP Morgan, Chase, I think they're all the same now. So, maybe mention a bank or a company or a firm that you want to work at and be able to create programs that are, or even like payment options, or like a payment company like Paydim or PayPal, any of those kind of different payment processes, Venmo, of creating accessibility in financial inclusion, whether that's microloans, et cetera, or just being able to have mobile payments, right? So, how do you want to use your expertise to make that social impact? What is the GPA cutoff that warrants an explanation in the optional essay? So I would say, like, if your GPA is, if it's congruent with like a 3.0 on the US scale, a 3 out of 4.0, then I think you're okay. If it starts to go below that, then maybe you need to talk about it. The bigger part is if you have recurring like a bunch of C's or an F, or what you were not actually doing well in, that's where we need to kind of talk about it. Where's the blip in your academic history that it's like, okay, awesome, we need to talk about this specific moment, this subject matter, or this semester, right? Like, so it's not necessarily all about the cumulative GPA and like what that cutoff is, but it's more of like, as you can see, I started off my undergrad as a pre-med student while I had a love for healthcare and helping people, I quickly realized after 2 semesters of biology and chemistry that it was not my strong suit, and my grades suffered due to this. And so I made a pivot and moved into XYZ and was able to find a way to further my passion for healthcare, and have now moved on to healthcare consulting. And I'm excited to, get an MBA from Wharton so that I can move into healthcare management at a higher level and work at one of the top biotech firms, something like that. Essay 2, since it's 400 words, what would be the ideal number of things that should showcase? Again, I think it's 2 or 3 ways that you want to make an impact. Again, it has a lot to do with words, how much word space you have or real estate you have. Should optional essay be an explanation? Again, I think that it can be an explanation, but it also needs to be a story of what you did to overcome that. Or if it's a story of accomplishment, is I wanted to take the opportunity to share with Wharton this specific experience that I wasn't able to share above. And I wanted to highlight my contribution, my experience, my deep passion for, and this is how I've also done this, by traveling to 15 different countries and immersing myself in the local experience, the local community. And I feel like this is going to be really impactful when I enter the Wharton cohort that has, 15 to 30% of people from outside the US, something like that. Okay. Alyssa, on the application, there's a Word doc request for any additional employment. I have additional employment, but nothing I really interested in elaborating on. Do I have to include this on the Word doc? Good question. I think it depends on how much it is, right? So you definitely want, what they want to see is your post-grad work experience. So if you had experience, like if you were working during college, or before you graduated, you don't necessarily need to include that. If you really felt like something was like a pivotal internship, or, you worked throughout the entire college experience, then maybe that's worth, submitting additional employment. Also, I think that we're talking about like the application form itself when you're going through it. I think it's really up to you. Again, like they're really more interested in your post-grad experience. And so try to, if you can't put all of those jobs in there, then definitely use the Word doc. There's nothing that's a penalty for that, right? Like if they're not necessarily substantial, you can just literally put their title, your role, and the dates that you work there. Rafaela, could you please enlighten us on what are the key differences between Wharton essays and other essays like HBS, GSB? For example, I feel like Wharton is much more specific and career focused. Yes, absolutely. So we have just a little bit of time left. So Wharton is very specific. Wharton is very precise in the fact that it has these things that they specifically want to learn from you. And so making sure that you're hitting on the topics and answering the question is very important. They want to know exactly how you feel like you are going to accomplish your career goals through Wharton and how you're going to make a contribution. That's absolutely what they want to know. Stanford is more philosophical, and they're looking more for like what matters most to you. What do you feel like? We want to have, open communication. And I would say there's a lot more opportunity to share different parts of your profile with Stanford with 5 essays. With Harvard, it's an open-ended essay. Typically, we like to kind of focus on one specific topic. But okay, should I use work industry, water utilities as a leverage in my study? Yes, Arvin, yes, absolutely use that as, something that you've done that other people absolutely haven't done. What should be the difficulty level of words that we use while essay writing? What I think this is, kind of talking about is, should you be like speaking at a very high level? this should be still somewhat conversational, but still, a formal essay. But you can speak in normal speak. You don't have to have jargon or very high level thesis type of speaking. This should be written for somebody who has been working in admissions for 10 years, that knows this much about everything. So you want to, don't get too deep in the weeds of, your specific experience, but you want to be able to show them what you have accomplished. Okay, so next, let's move on and look at, I have an essay sample here. So GMAT Club shared somebody who, delightfully shared their essays and asked for some feedback. So I'm going to give it, this is not going to be super in depth the same way that I would do an application that I work on with a candidate, but I want to give you some good ideas. So without reading it to you, I will say that this candidate did a good job of starting off their opening by being interesting, right? My introduction to investment banking dawned during my undergraduate days at the University of Lagos, where I attended a discourse by the National Economic Student Association. The session featured a distinguished investment banker from Nigeria's largest indigenous investment bank, eloquently elucidating the role of investment banks in catalyzing economic growth by financing private business and government entities. Whoo! It is definitely very interesting, but definitely very wordy. So, what you want to do is that's your initial. This is like a great first draft, right? I mean, it is definitely high level language, but this is a great first draft. Now we want to kind of take from this, what are we wanting the committee to see? And so your introduction to investment banking, it dawned on them when they were at this conference and they heard the speaker. And so, what is it that was the most interesting part of it? You don't need to say that you were at the University of Lagos. You don't have to say, that you attended, featured a distinguished investment banker from Nigeria. This is who really made the impact on you, right? My introduction to investment banking dawned during a speaker session from an investment banker from Nigeria's largest indigenous investment bank. They were able to, instead of elucidating I can't say that word right now. The role of investment banks in catalyzing economic growth and financing private businesses. So, what is it, how would you tell this to maybe your grandmother, right? What is it that you want them to see? Is that this is a moment where you were able to see that banks can actually utilize indigenous investment banks and be able to catalyze economic growth in private businesses and government through these banks in rural and indigenous areas, right? That's the cool part. So, figure out a way to make that maybe 2 sentences. This encounter ignited my passion, propelling me to pursue my ACA certification, furnishing me with the requisite accounting and finance foundation for investment banking career. So, I mean, I think it's good to show these achievements, right? But I don't know if we necessarily have to be as specific as associate, like my ACA. You could just say, this is what propelled me to becoming a chartered accountant, making me well-positioned to move into an investment banking career. Once I completed these studies, being able to gain a pivotal role. I don't think it needs to be my inaugural position, but it can be, securing a position with Main Street Capital Limited. And again, I don't think that you need to discuss what Main Street Capital Limited is, that description that's behind there should actually be in your resume too, right? Like, remember, they've just read your resume, so now they're kind of trying to connect the dots. So, I think that you can definitely shorten this part up and take out what I would call the fluff. But you're showing this career progression of, okay, so I moved from maybe, I don't know what the undergrad degree was, but you moved from maybe finance to really being focused on, investment banking. And then you were able to, get your chartered accountancy to get that foundation. And then you gained your role at Mainstream Capital. Then you got your CFA. And again, like, I don't think that you need to talk about these countless nights of dedicated study, because they're going to see that, right? They know what goes into getting your chartered accountancy. They know what it takes to get your CFA. So you don't have to tell them as much about these certifications. And I don't think that you have to list them either. So maybe it depends, like, this essay could go multiple ways, but I think unless you're going to talk about the culmination of my ACA, my CFA, my AFM, and my FMI, give me this exact experience that I have crafted to be able to get to the next level. Like, unless you're going to talk about how you combine them to make something amazing, I don't think you need to list them all out, right? You need to maybe focus on, what's most important. They know about the ACA or Chartered Accountancy, and it's like one of the most grueling exams, as well as the CFA, right? So the other parts, they're good. They're on your resume. They're in the application portal. You don't have to include them here. So this is the first 2 paragraphs, and then we'll move into the next 3. So they talk about their journey into investment banking and what it's characterized by. I think this could be a good lead-in, but maybe this is a good lead-in for maybe listing out, going through several different certifications. Again, it doesn't have to have that big list, but achieving 5 different certifications across different financial skills, and then engaging in diverse capital markets and advisory roles. So this is, where you kind of want to start editing down, because now we're, 2 previous paragraphs, 3rd, 4th, then in the 5th paragraph, finally talking about what the goal is, right? So we need to move that goal up a good bit. Yes, you should be creating a journey and a path for them to understand what you've accomplished, but this is taking too long and focused way too much on the past and not necessarily talking about the future and about Wharton. So, it's good, but it's maybe some of this could be put into essay number 2 about this specific, experience or certifications, and how you can definitely help the committee or help the cohort with understanding different markets, or being able to understand how different certifications could play different roles, those types of things. But then we finally get to the point where, as I work towards my post-MBA goal of excelling in investment banking, I'm eager to fortify my skill set through the Wharton School's globally focused curriculum. That's too vague. So, yes, you want to go investment banking, but, I can see where this person wants to go, as far as like, I'm excited about investment banking on a global level and being able to, focus my skills on specific, talk about a specific set, like what kind of funds are you looking at, or sectors that you're wanting to work on in investment banking. Investment banking can be very big. It's very competitive. You may even want to offer a backup plan. So there's definitely a lot of really strong parts to this application or this essay. It just gets a little weak whenever we're cramming in your goals and Wharton in the last 3 to 4 or 3 paragraphs. So I did highlight here this paragraph that's highlighted with green is definitely a great paragraph to include somewhere, and maybe that's, going to replace a different one. But this one feels like it shows a lot of experience and accomplishment. Maybe take out some of the jargon and not list as much, but it's a good one where you're talking about the pivotal juncture in your career. So that's a big part that should definitely help you with this next talk about how you're transitioning to your post-MBA goals. Okay, so I got an alert. We only have 5 minutes left. If you guys can take a second to like and subscribe to our channel, and then I will go into our last paragraph real quickly. Again, like you can always go back and look at this video and kind of dive in a little bit deeper, but what you'll see is it is very narrow as far as how much they're like connecting this to Wharton. So there's, their goal is here of, creating a private equity fund in Africa, bolster access to bankable infrastructure. This is actually very concise and fantastic, but tell me how this relates to Wharton and what the resources are and the clubs and the activities. So yeah, again, I know that this is super short at the very end, but we do have a few minutes for questions. I see them kind of building up in the queue, so I'm going to answer them. And my contact information is here. So if you have questions and follow-up, I'm definitely happy to answer them via my email. Okay, so let's go back just a little bit. Okay, so let's see. In the career goals essay, is it okay to write personal achievements that would be because of accomplishments of a career goals? I'm not sure I understand that question all the way. Yep, I think you can tie them together if they're personal and professional, if that helps answer the question. AJ, so location-specific info, such as University of Lagos, could be eliminated for more brevity and communicate in more clear, concise terms. Correct. Absolutely. This essay is full of fluff, and I definitely think that there's ways to make it more concise and more impactful. Ashita, the last paragraph connects the goals to Wharton's curriculum, but all the reasons of why Wharton seem very vague. Correct. I love this. I love your analysis as well. Like they could be applied to any other school. Is that all right? No, it's not all right. You want to have specific goals that are tied to that specific school. There was no mention of like the Africa Club or the Africa Investment Club, or maybe somebody who had started, an Africa interest club of some sorts, or even any sort of curriculum that related to it either. So there's definitely so much more that you can do. Is it necessary to spend so much of the essay on the past accomplishments? No, like I was saying, there's definitely a lot there. Once you get to know the candidate or the client, for me, then it makes it a lot easier to say like, okay, so I get that these certifications are important for your next step and what you want to do. So how do we bring them together and make it concise? Because again, these are on your resume as well as the application portal. Where can we find your contact info? I didn't find it on a Aringo website. So again, I'm showing that now. So please feel free to reach out. Where can I find your, and then Ira, how much context do you need to give while explaining a work achievement? Because it takes up a lot of words. So again, if that work achievement is referenced on your resume, then you can take for granted that the committee has read that, right? So use that to say, how much of it do I need to, how much of it do I need to surround with additional insights or introductory? If it's even talking about that one accomplishment and how it led to the next part of your career and your goals, could be enough. You don't have to go through several different accomplishments. If it's just one, I think that's okay too. Okay. Any other questions? All right. So I'm going to wait just a few more seconds before I get cut off. But next up is the Yale SOM essay dive. So definitely stay tuned for that. Again, subscribe and like for us, and share it with your friends. Look forward to connecting with you all. And I also, if you email me, I can also send you a link for a free profile evaluation. And we can also, like, if you wanted to cover any questions that you had here, again, feel free to email me. I'm happy to chat about it. I know that our session was a little bit short. Excellent. Awesome. Well, thank you guys so much. I really enjoyed getting to speak with you. Thanks so much for being interactive and joining me. I hope that everything goes well in your application. If you need any help, let us know.